Just having this model here, bringing it in through the women's justice programs in here in our jail and diversion programs. You've seen that happen in other cities too. I mean, we are ground zero for the Tulsa Race Massacre. There's a lot of cultural divide in this community. There's a lot of cultural hurt that needs mending.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
can you project kind of what you can see based upon your experience in other cities, how this could change the systemic problems that we have here?
Well, I think it really begins with honest dialogue. Heat allows that. Heat doesn't negate the fact that trauma, not only just trauma through the ACEs, adverse childhood experience trauma, but we're talking about historical trauma that's been generationally passed on. We're talking about trauma, race-based trauma, Black trauma that is experienced, and have an honest conversation about that. Part of the curriculum identifies that and accepts that and has discussions about that. And I think that's really where the healing really has to begin, through honest dialogue with addressing it and not sweeping it on the rug. And I think one of the things that has been even more devastating than the massacre itself is how this community has swept that issue under the rug, not even discussed it, not even acknowledged it. And as a result, the trauma is permeated where the wounds are deep. I mean, many of the participants that we were talking to today in the training were actually African Americans who grew up in Tulsa, many of them even growing up in North Tulsa, and had family members that were part of that experience. And how they talked about, just recently, we've even started to have this conversation about the massacre.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
it's just recently been part of the dialogue.
Yes. So those conversations need to be held, and I think that's a beginning. And I think what HEAT really does is allow the identifying the racial trauma, the generational trauma that's been passed down generationally, begin to have a conversation about that. Now, not thriving in it, blaming, waddling in it, but understanding, having an honest conversation about what happened and how communities have been impacted. And then what can we do to help change and grow the community to address social determinants that make our community unhealthy and unsafe. And having even the participants in the model being a part of that. How do we create a healthy and safer community in Tulsa? HEAT is allowing these participants in this model, in this intervention, to have those kind of discussions. You are the leaders we've been waiting for. We're not waiting on the government to change us. We're not waiting on programs to change us. The leaders that are going to change and heal this community are actually going to be sitting in the HEAT groups.
Wow.
And they're the leaders we've been waiting for. So let's empower, let's educate, and let's, the E in HEAT is empowerment. Let's empower them to be the soldiers, to be the leaders that we have been waiting for to help change and make our communities healthy.
And the beauty of this is that what we're seeing is it provides for the global culture. So it's not just one culture that we're talking about.
Right.
Because if it impacts one, it impacts everybody that is in the room. So the global culture, which we look at it as very mosaic in a sense. The beauty of this mosaic of everybody working in a collaborative, collective kind of manner and say, hey, let's sit down and talk. What can we do to make Oklahoma a better community?
Right. Well, communities are mosaic.
Right.
And the more we can cross those lines and have honest conversations,
Right.
the more that we'll have a better
So
understanding.
that's what we're seeing, that even when we went to the museum, everybody was impacted.
Right.
Everybody. It was not just one segment, it was a whole group. So when we're sitting down talking to them, when they're all coming back together, everybody's emotional. The issues that we're talking about, it's not just one particular group, it's the entire culture. And that's the beauty of having this working together, because now a lot of them can look at themselves individually and say, you know what, this happened in my family.
And you know what? One of the white therapists that was at the training came to me individually and pulled me to a side. He said, my grandfather was a part of that.
Really?
And he was white. And he was a part of what happened on the Greenwood district.
So did he feel shame? Was he addressing any of that?
I think what has to happen, and what we talked about, is how do you move from awareness to feeling shame to understanding and empowerment to be anti-racist, if you will, as a white Caucasian, not just feeling white guilt. That's not helpful.
I agree.
That's not helpful to feel white guilt. I mean, that's a normal reaction. I get that. But how do we move that to understanding? How do we move understanding into action and becoming anti-racist, where you can become an advocate for change and healing? And that's what we talked about.
That we all grow.
Right. So, Micah, all the individuals that were trained this week, what are they going to do next with this information?
Well, we are certainly going to implement it in our various programs. So Women in Recovery is going to implement it in our phase program. We've already, in fact, one of our team members who attended Erica Jackson came back, and she already had a plan on how we could integrate it into our program.
She's on fire.
And that is something I've been pondering for like the past years. Like, we need this. How do I work this in
Right.
the thing? So we're going to create an additional track for women of color to run parallel with some of our other programming. And they will do the majority through their second phase, and then near the end, they will have the community module separate from the rest of it.
Okay.
And that will be the closed group part of things.
One thing I would suggest, I wouldn't just make it race-based. This is culture. This is a culturally responsive curriculum.
Thank you.
Now, this culturally for Black culture, but there are white participants that could also benefit.
Very well.
That I will, on a case-by-case basis, make a recommendation they could also participate.
I think that's
we've
great.
had
That
we've
is
had
fantastic.
white, we've had Hispanic populations that have greatly benefited. As a matter of fact, our first study that we did,
That's true.
it was a white participant in the program, and SAMHSA funded the program, and they wanted to focus. We wanted to focus on African American populations, black men.
And I bet it would help Native Americans as well.
Oh, absolutely. I've had several tribal nations who have been inquiring. So far that I know of, actually, we have one lady that was trying to take it to women. The lady in St. Louis that moved to a tribal nation in Washington. I need to call her to see how that's going. But that I know of. That's the only tribal nation I know it's been implemented. But what we discovered was my phone number had been passed around the jail.
Oh, how fun for you.
And yeah, people were calling me. I had all types of phone calls because these guys knew that if they got into the research model project, they got out of jail. Because we were going to deliver it on outpatient.
Get out of jail free card.
And my number was being passed around. I was getting all kinds of phone calls. So it was this one guy, his name was Robert. And Robert says, "Yo, come see me, dog. I heard about this heat. And, I want to get in the program." I said, "Okay, I got to do an assessment. If you meet the criteria, we'll get you out. Well, does that mean I get out of jail? Well, if you qualify for the program, yeah, we'll do what we can to get you out. I'll come and see you next week." So I went to see the guy, and I went to the to the staff and said, "Hey, I'm here to see Robert, do an assessment." And they said, "Yeah, there he is right there." And I said, "No, I'm looking for the Black Robert." And they said, "No, that's the only Robert we have." And Robert walks up and goes, "Yo, what's up, Mr. D? I'm glad to see you, man." And I said, "Oh,
It's a true story.
Robert, you are white."
It's a true story.
So, I mean, the guy was very enthusiastic. He was, he fit all the clinical criteria he fit.
It was great.
And I said, "Look, Robert, I said, to be honest with you, this program, because of the study we're doing, we're looking for African-American males. But if you want to be in this program, I will not deny you. But I'm just telling you what it's for." Okay? And he was like, "Yo, Mr. D, most of my friends are Black. When I got high, that's who I got high with. My girlfriend, I live in a Black neighborhood. I'm cool with the culture, man. Let me in."
Cool.
And Robert did very well in the program. Robert went through the program.
Very well.
And ended up, when we had graduation, the Black men in the program selected him to be the graduation speaker.
That's correct.
Oh, that's awesome.
And as a white guy. And he did very well in this program and actually found out his grandmother that showed up to the graduation that he came from affluence.
Oh.
That his grandmother, that his family was one of the most upper crust, wealthiest, affluent families in that county.
Interesting.
And it turned out to be great. So, you know, we have had a lot of success with white participants in the program, Hispanics, and would love to see Native Americans. But it's cultural because I don't even believe, Guy, and I don't know if you agree with this, but I don't even think all African Americans could fit in this program.
Oh, I agree.
It's cultural.
Sure.
It's totally cultural.
And it's not race. So we're not just putting all black people in the program.
No.
That's not it. That's not clinical criteria.
No.
It's a certain cultural aspect that if they fit and they relate to, then that's the criteria.
And let me give you something parallel. It's like Motown, okay? You can dance to it, okay? Because every culture can dance to Motown, all right? Every culture. And if you can dance to it because that is the lingo, the language, the understanding, the clinical kinds of implications, the interventions that speaks to your heart and mind with a cognitive behavioral therapeutic kind of concept, utilizing all of the Freud and the Erickson and all of the clinical stuff we certainly utilize with that cultural kind of Motown that everybody can be included as well as on the dance. Therefore, as a result of that, people are dancing to it and coming out with much better outcomes. And hold it before you say something. You got to also look at it from a continuity of care. We're also doing this and talking about in prisons. We're also talking about doing it in jails, reentry. One of our first ones.
Even residential.
There's your access piece.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I love that metaphor.
Have you heard of Barnum and Bailey?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Have you been to the Barnum and Bailey circus?
Of course.
It's a great circus.
I'm a fan of the elephants.
I grew up on Barnum and Bailey. Very entertaining. But later, I discovered that there was a soul circus.
Oh, is it similar to the Soul Train?
Well, yeah, that's another good metaphor because I loved American Bandstand. I mean, Dick Clark was probably one of the most progressive guys at the time because he brought a lot of African-American artists to American Bandstand. And I loved Dick Clark, and I watched it every Saturday. But when Soul Train came,
Whoa.
Dick Clark came secondary.
So my favorite was Soul Train and the Flip Wilson Show. Just saying.
Okay, we understand. The beauty of it. That's fine.
But let me tell you something. You haven't seen a circus until you go to the Soul Circus.
That's true.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's just, do you want to listen to Barry Manilow or do you want to listen to Tupac or Kendrick Lamar? It's kind of like
Michael Jackson or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're old, man. Michael Jackson.